For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
In the summer of 1979, a man with a calm demeanor walked inside the Elbert Granite Finishing Company. He began speaking to the owner and operator of the shop about a strange monument that he wanted done. This monument would have these laws inscribed on them for the survivors of a post-apocalyptic future. As he went on describing these stones, the owner began to think this man was crazy. He started asking himself how to get rid of this person. After a somewhat lengthy speech, the strange man asked the owner for the price that such a monument would cost. Seeing this as an opportunity to drive the strange person away, the owner gave him a quote that was 10 times the price of the largest job he's ever done. Without batting an eye, the interesting character asked when would work begin. This is the story of the Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones are a granite monument located in Elbert County, Georgia. Its location is about a 2-hour drive from downtown Atlanta, so getting to the site is pretty easy. The Guidestone consists of 4 major slabs, each being 16 feet 4 inches tall and 6 feet 6 inches wide. There's also a center slab with the same height of 16 feet 4 inches, but with a smaller width of 3 feet 3 inches. A capstone sits at the top of the 5 slabs. This capstone is 9 feet 8 inches long and 6 feet 6 inches wide. All the slabs are 1 foot 7 inches thick, by the way, so they are not just tall, but wide and bulky. When you account for the capstone, the Guidestone monument is 19 feet 3 inches tall and has a total weight of 245,000 pounds, or 122.5 tons, whichever unit you prefer. Around the edges of the capstone are inscriptions written in 4 ancient languages, 1 language per edge. Moving clockwise, these languages are Babylonian, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. The message written in these languages mean, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason." The main feature of the monument is a set of 10 guidelines inscribed on each side of the 4 major slabs. These laws, or rules, whatever you want to call them, are written in 8 modern languages: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. These languages were chosen because they are the most widely spoken tongues on the planet. The laws advocate for population control, eugenics, and globalism. Rule 6, for an example, states that nations should resolve external disputes in a world court, which implies a world government of some sort. This concept is what many would call a new world order.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
I should take a moment now to clear out the fact that the concept of a new world order is not a conspiracy, but an actual goal desired by some, and antagonized by others. The point that is being contested is whether a global government would produce world peace or a tyrannical elite. Anyway, let's put aside the political philosophy for now and look at how all this started. I have mentioned in the intro that a strange man walked in the Elbert Granite Finishing Company. That man was Robert C. Christian. I also mentioned an owner who thought R.C. Christian was crazy after hearing the strange proposal. This person was Joe Findlay. Another thing worth mentioning, R.C. Christian is not a real name. It is a pseudonym the man openly admitted of using to disguise his identity. Christian also said that he represented a group of, quote, loyal Americans who believed in God, end quote. This group had been planning for the Guidestones for over 20 years apparently, and wants to remain anonymous. To this day, Christian's real name and the identity of the group behind him remain unknown. After accepting Findlay's expensive quote, Christian delivered a scale model of the Guidestones and 10 pages of specification. To process this large transaction, Findlay sent Christian to look for Wyatt Martin, president of the Granite City Bank, to serve as the financial intermediary. The two negotiated a confidential agreement. Martin pledged not to disclose any of the personal or financial data of the transaction to anyone. All documents and records were to be burned once the project was finished. The money was placed in an account for Findlay, and Christian also purchased 5 acres of land in Elberton from Wayne Mullenix. This was to become the site for the Guidestones. Work began in 1979. R.C. Christian had chosen his location wisely. Elberton is actually the granite capital of the world, so the large stones required for the monument were quarried locally. An abandoned shed was chosen as the site for the finishing work. The specifications were so precise that they had to be compiled not only by stone experts, but construction engineers as well. At this open-air site, Findlay and his crew trimmed away 4 tons from each stone, bringing them to the exact specifications prescribed by Christian and his group. To support the massive weight and geometrical alignment, the foundation work was to be very exacting. In fact, this project was so technically challenging that Findlay employed the top craftsman in the granite industry, Joe B. Davis, to supervise the project. Joe had actually retired in 1974, but came out of retirement to work on the Georgia Guidestones. Since the monument had astrological features, engineers and astronomers were employed for the positioning and placement of the stones. Experts from the United Nations were also consulted for the Babylonian, Sanskrit, Classical Greek, and Egyptian hieroglyph translations. Findlay hired a contractor named Charlie Clamp to sandblast the letters into the Guidestones. Charlie etched out more than 4,000 individual letters into the stone. Fun side note here, one day, as Charlie was blasting the stones to inscribe the letters, a local came by and asked him why he was doing the work of the devil. I thought that was interesting. Whether this was the devil's assignment or not, work would continue. After 9 months of labor on what is now considered America's Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones were unveiled on March 22, 1980, before a crowd of over 400 people. The product was certainly impressive. The Guidestones flawlessly track the sun. More specifically, it tracks the sun east to west migration year-round. There is also an eye-level hole drilled in a center support stone that allows stargazers to locate Polaris, the North Star. A 7/8 inch hole drilled to the capstone focuses a sunbeam on a center column at noon, which in turn pinpoints the day of the year. Pretty cool stuff. Those of you who want to visit the Georgia Guidestones can save this location on a Cityscape app. Now, this is the moment you've probably been waiting for. What do these Guidestones say? What is the wisdom they want to pass down into the age of reason? Well, let's have a look. Number 1. Maintain humanity under 500 million, in perpetual balance with nature. Number 2. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Number 3. Unite humanity with a living new language. Number 4. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Number 5. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Number 6. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Number 7. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Number 8. Balance personal rights with social duties. Number 9. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Number 10. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Now, if I were to share my thoughts on every single one of these laws, this episode would take forever. For the sake of brevity, I will only share my thoughts on what I believe to be the most pertinent ones. In this case, it will be Law 1, 2, 6, and 10. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. The number of 500 million seems awfully arbitrary. Why is 500 million good, but 1 billion bad? If the reasoning is less people are better, why not 200 million or 100 million? Hell, why not just 1 million? At what point is it too little or too much? If this is a guidestone of reason, I would expect solid justifications backed by proof as to why 500 million is the optimal number. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. I have 2 issues with this law. First, who is guiding reproduction exactly? Is it an academic expert? A government official? Can you even imagine what unintended consequences will result from such an artificial policy? Second, what does fitness even mean? What is considered fit in the entertainment industry of LA is not the same as what's fit in the tech industry of Silicon Valley. Genetic fitness isn't absolute, but based on a local environment. On top of that, as the environment and culture changes, so does the standards of fitness. Fitness is a relative term. Friedrich Nietzsche's Übermensch does not exist. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Haven't the League of Nations failed in preventing World War II? Our pseudo-world court right now, the United Nations, still did not prevent the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam, and Iraq from happening. If governments are the agents that take a nation to war, shouldn't we want less of it rather than more? People don't go to war and drag the government into it. It is actually the other way around. Governments drag their population into a war. A world court also gets into direct conflict with Rule 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. I don't see how a world government wouldn't result in more bureaucrats. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. I find this law spooky. I can't help but get the feeling that the authors see most humans as a drain on scarce resources. This sort of idea has its roots in a Malthusian theory that populations should be checked in order to prevent resource shortages. I'd like to remind the Malthusians out there that resources are not a fixed, predetermined thing. What is considered a resource today may not be a resource tomorrow. One can think of coal being phased out as a good example of such. Likewise, what we don't consider a resource today may become a valuable resource tomorrow. For an example, in most of human history, oil was not considered a resource, neither was electricity. It took the mind of Rockefeller and Edison for oil and electricity to become a commodity. So who knows, in the future, sand can become one of the biggest resources. But today, it's just lying on a beach, ignored by everyone. For a monument claiming to be a guide for an age of reason, the reasoning displayed by its inscriptions seem rather lacking. I certainly don't think the secretive group who erected the stones are evil. In fact, I actually believe they are well-intentioned people. But you know the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The vagueness and arbitrary decrees of the Guidestones are amusing at best, and potentially dangerous at worst. The potential danger lies in the fact that crowds do not know any middle ground. The mob only thinks in extremes. These rules can be easily misinterpreted by someone or some group and used as an excuse to commit terrible atrocities. They would not view their deeds as malevolent, however. After all, how can you be evil if your intentions are to bring the greater good on Earth? In the movie The Avengers, the character Thanos thought he was being very benevolent for wiping out half the cosmic population in order to prevent famines. To me, the thinking behind the Guidestones aren't so different. Regardless of the case, whether you agree or disagree with the Guidestones, I do believe the fact that this monument is sparking discussion makes them a success. That's the beauty of life. Let those who differ from you live, and eventually, you'll discover that the contrast they give you reaffirms your sense of self. In a strange way, you need them to know you. See you next time.